Ba-da-ba-ba, ba-da-ba-ba. All right. Promoter 101. 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 Promoter 101.
Hi, this is Heath Miller.
Becca Leifer.
Ed Mike Cohn.
Derek Dimmenstein.
Jason Kupperman.
Jason Miller.
John Schur.
Marsha Vlasic.
Mike Fruitman. Ricardo Bacco.
Peter Schwartz.
Nick Storch.
I'm on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
I'm on Promoter 101.
Cub One Cabal, as it's time once again for the greatest music industry podcast ever. It's Promoter 101, and it's time to begin. This is chapter 42 of our journey. I'm your head waiter, Dan Steinberg, and with me, of course, pairing the wines perfectly for each of our guests is our co-host, manager extraordinaire, Mr. Luke Pierce.
Dan, absolutely great to be back. We had a big week this week, man. Got some real recording done. Did a lot of interviews this week in New York. Slew of great guests and some awesome stories in the can. And we can't wait to share some of those stories with you. Dan, you had a big week. I got to give you a shameless shout out for opening the Levitt Pavilion in Denver this weekend. How'd the shows go?
Anytime you have a new construction, you're always concerned that something's going to go wrong. Weather could hold you up. It was beautiful. Modest Yahoo rocked the house last night, and then UB40 closed the show. And man, you forget how many hits those guys have. It was a great time. Great staff at Levitt. The Emporium staff kicked ass. I'm really proud of this venue, and I can't wait to see 311 take stage there in August.
Big congrats to you, to Jason, Aaron, everybody, and Becky in the Emporium Denver office. I know that's been a big project for you guys. And of course, Chris Zach are over at Levitt as well, too. It's a big thing you guys are doing in a great marketplace. Excited to hear some more stories come August. As for the podcast this week, to continue your lovely restaurant metaphor, we do have a lovely pairing of interviews this week. We're going to kick it off with legendary rock agent, APA's Troy Blakely. And then we're going to be joined by tour producer, Peppa Pig manager, Red Light Management, Mr. Jonathan Shank. And this week, we're trying out a brand new segment. We're calling it Turn the Tables. We're going to give the chance to the guest who we just interviewed to ask us some questions in return. Should we get down to it, Dan?
We should. We should absolutely get to it. Let's do it right now, my friend.
Jim Glancy, Barry Presents on Promoter 101.
The rumors are true. Promoter 101 is going back on tour.
Thursday, September 7th, the Promoter 101 World Tour kicks off at the Western Arts Alliance Conference in Seattle with Triple Doors Scott Jampino and ICM Partners Andrea Johnson.
On Thursday, October 12th, we're shipping off to Boston. We're going to be at the Berklee College of Music's Popular Institute. Come join us in Boston.
Monday, October 16th, we will be at IEBA Conference in Nashville.
And between all this, keep up with us in the madness on Twitter. Dan is at The Jew. The show is Promoters 101. That's Promoters plural. And I'm at W. Luke Pierce.
And if you have any feedback for us about the podcast, we'd love to hear it from you. Send us an email with your thoughts and ideas to Steiny at promoter101.net. And let me also add, if you need any details on any of those live shows, hit the website, promoter101.net, for all our live appearance info, right down to the location, time, and a link to where you can get registration or tickets.
And be sure to subscribe to Promoter 101 wherever you podcast. And please help us spread the word about this podcast by telling your friends.
And you can always catch up on past podcasts if you missed them, and catch up at promoter101.net. This week, Jamie Loeb is our featured re-released issue. It's episode number 2, and Niederlander Concerts Vice President of Marketing breaks it down for us. Everything from social media to radio and even a little bit of print talk. Should be good, Luke.
Very excited to revisit that one.
This is Marsha Vlasic, and I am president of AGI Talent Agency, and on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101, it's the news of the week, and we're joined by Amplify Magazine and Billboard's Dave Brooks. Welcome back to the show, Dave.
Thanks, Steiny. Thanks for having me.
We got to ask you, I know there's a lot going on there. Where do we start?
So
very sad news this week, Dan. As you've probably seen, it's been everywhere. Chester Bennington of Lincoln Park passed away at his home in Palos Verdes down here in Southern California. The coroner's office has ruled it a suicide. He's leaving, but he leaves behind his wife and 6 kids. This comes just months after passing of Chris Cornell, and just a week before the band was set to go on a huge 27-date tour that included stops like the Hollywood Bowl. It's a really sad news, and our heart goes out to his family and fans and everyone on Team Lincoln Park.
Clearly, everybody from Bill Silva management on down, the family, the 6 children, our hearts go out to them. And this has got to be a very shocking moment because that album was the most critically acclaimed they've had in years. And they're about to start a massive tour, as you mentioned. Some of those were co-headline stadium tour dates with Blink-182. I mean, they were doing some cool things, and it seemed like it was a really good moment. But I guess you really never know what's going on inside, huh, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to put yourself in that position of somebody, who's in that kind of crisis.
Hearing some other rattlings in the industry, some jumps out from Live Nation. What's the story there?
Big news this week at Live Nation UTA. Dave Zedek is leaving his EVP post at Live Nation to go over to UTA and head up their music division. Jeremy Zimmer was a huge part of getting David to make the jump to UTA, and I think it's a very interesting time for that agency. They just bought the agency group a couple years ago. They've had a bunch of hires, Kurt Motley and Greg Janice in Nashville, and I think they're just going to continue to shape the agency to become a major power player in the music business.
UTA is certainly on the move. David Zedek, known for his work with the pop acts for ages. I mean, he's in the front row of making those things happen from the early days. And of course, he started as an agent, so no surprise that he returned to that, although he was just killing it as a promoter. You got to love what happened there. I see nothing but big moves with him going back to UTA. David Zedek is a powerhouse in this industry. And things are happening for UTA. They've got the Guns N' Roses tour out right now. They've got Muse out. They are really starting to break through on another level.
Yeah, and I'm hearing, with the hires that the other agencies are scrambling and are a little freaked out. I mean, who's he going to pull over to UTA? What agents is he going to poach away? There's a lot of nervous folks out there at CAA, WME, even Paradigm wondering what this means for their business.
We'll have to stay and watch. That'll be interesting. What else is going on in the world?
So we got a bit of a complicated legal story this week, but I think it's important. The ongoing trial of Pasquale Rotella with Insomniac over the 2010 Electric Daisy Carnival. I mean, this thing's been going on for 7 years now. The criminal trial got pretty much tossed out after Pasquale's attorney, Gary J. Kaufman, caught the prosecutor's team, the so-called Public Integrity Unit, committing all sorts of illegal acts, including reading attorney-client privileged emails. So that's done. Now we're on to the civil trial. And what Gary J. Kaufman has turned up is that attorneys representing the Coliseum that are suing Pasquale once again are misusing private information. What we're hearing is that as part of the discovery process, they had to turn over some highly sensitive contracts between Pasquale and Live Nation. What the Coliseum attorneys did after they received these files was turn around and file a new civil complaint disclosing all the information, which Live Nation paid for Insomniac. It exposed a $2 million legal fund set up in case they were going to settle it. And this thing is going to go back to court in early August, and they're going to try to have this thrown out as well. So if they succeed, this will be the second major case in this ongoing saga tossed out because of rampant misconduct on the part of those lawyers coming after Pasquale.
Insomniac is clearly the biggest name in electronica right now. Electric Daisy is the Coachella of EDM, and they're doing amazing things. Clearly, these guys are in the wild, wild west of still developing this industry, or at least they were 7 years ago, as it's completely in full swing now. But it's good to see that Live Nation's in there helping them fight the fight, because these guys are pioneers, and what they're doing is next-level production.
Absolutely. The shows that Pasquale and Insomniac put on are amazing. From a legal perspective, this just makes it really difficult to have any confidence in the legal system. I mean, I've been watching this case, and it just seems like these attorneys who are coming after Pasquale will cheat and do whatever it takes to win. And thank God he's got this attorney. Pasquale's got this attorney that's keeping an eye on him.
Awesome. I'm hearing other rumors being swirled around out there. You broke a big story this week, Dave. What was it? Tell everybody about it. It's a big one.
We revealed the identities behind agent versus promoter. The agent was Paradigm's Joe Tamian, and the promoter was Majestic Live's Scott Leslie out of Madison.
Hold on a second. Now, I know how Joe got outed because of a social media glitch, but did Scott get outed too, or did Scott out himself once the gig was up with Joe?
Scott outed himself a few days later in an exclusive interview he did with me at Billboard, where they talked about the future of agent versus promoter. Thankfully, they're going to keep it going, and there's some interesting ideas on how they're going to do that.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, man, for talking to us on Promoter 101. You always have the cutting-edge news. I love that you get the scoops.
Hey, I love doing it, man. It's my passion. And thanks for having me. I love the podcast. You guys are doing amazing work.
Appreciate it, brother. I hope you'll come back soon.
Anytime.
Incredibly esoteric piece of news in the world today, and the outing of agent versus promoter. That's right. For those of you who are not familiar, there is an awesome Instagram account that's agent versus promoter, agent vs promoter on Instagram. It also pushes out to Tumblr. It's a ton of GIFs, a ton of jokes about the music business. You should absolutely go and check out all the old posts about this. And after about 3 years of anonymity, operating just as the quote-unquote agent and just as the quote-unquote promoter, we finally learned last week the identity that Paradigm's Joe Tamian is in fact the agent. That's when his socials started to sync with agent versus promoter, and his name was accidentally leaked out there. Dave Brooks broke this story in Billboard, probably citing the excellent reporting we did, Dan. We caught it and tweeted during last week's recording, which is pretty funny. But the identity of promoters soon followed, and that was none other than Scott Leslie, our buddy from Majestic Presents, who came forward to join Joe outside the shadows. Dan, we got to get Joe and Scott on here. Let's make that happen.
You know what? I can do even better. They've already both promised. They're coming on the podcast this upcoming week to talk to us all about it. They're going to lay it down for us. And of course, it's the best prank in the history of the industry as far as I'm concerned, because it's gone on for so long. So well done. Amazing, right? So Joe Tamian and Scott Leslie both here on the podcast next week and talking about the tale behind the scene.
Hi, it's Phil Ernst from Madison Square Garden, and this is Promoters 101.
This is a guest that our listeners have been asking for quite some time. We're thrilled to finally have him, the legendary rock agent from APA, Mr. Troy Blakely. Welcome to Promoter 101.
Promoter 101, we're in Los Angeles, California, hanging out with the legendary Troy Blakely. Thank you so much for making time, man.
There you go, using legendary.
Well, I was going to say iconic motherfucker, but I was trying. It's early.
Well, I like to think that the artists and the people I've worked with are legendary. And, if I've been able to contribute to their careers and they've trusted me to do that, thank goodness, and help them along the way, that's enough for me. I don't have to have any titles or anything like that. It's been a great time working with these really legendary performers. And that's why I'm here today, really to share their stories with you as much as mine.
And I'm stoked you are here because you've had a little bit of sickness over the last couple of years, but you're back and you're at it again, and I'm glad to see you healthy and here.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's been a tough year, and, I don't tell people about it, I don't talk about it very much, but it was a tough year last year, but got through it, and I'm 100% cured from cancer. For the second time,
for, man. You got one of the hottest voices of anybody I know, man. You got
thanks.
A lot to live for.
Thanks. Oh yeah. That's why legendary is also, or legend or whatever you use. I think I have a lot more to do, and I know that Robert Plant always hated that legend title and so many other things that people would call him because he felt he had more to contribute. It wasn't just about Led Zeppelin. And, I feel that, I've been at 3 different companies over my career, and I'm going to be at APA until I finally do retire or they take me out feet first. That's the last company I'll be at, and so I want to make more waves as much as I can at APA for the time I have left to contribute. And I want to continue to contribute to this business and this company that I'm so in love with.
There's something to be said for that agency in particular. Guys like you, Danny Robbins, obviously Jim Gosnell, even Josh Humiston. Like, careers that aren't jumping from agency to agency. You guys found your home, and obviously they make you guys happy. I mean, Jim, it's his place. He's not going anywhere. But you guys have all been there for a very long time, and it speaks to how well that agency must treat their agents, that you got no plans of going anywhere and you want to finish at the team where you're at. That's got to be a great thing.
Well, I've only been at 3 agency in my 43-year career. DMA in the early days, ICM in the middle years, and now this is 23 years at APA. And I was with DMA, which was a small agency with just a family of agents. It was
that was
really
in Detroit,
good.
Right?
Back in Detroit, and DMA was the company that represented all those legendary artists in Detroit, from the MC5 and Iggy and the Stooges and Alice Cooper and all those great acts. And Alice Cooper was a band that they actually broke by sending their Alice Cooper's record to radio stations and working with promoters and really helped break that artist. But then Alice left Detroit and went to a New York agent, left DMA.
But DMA had a lot of great agents, right? Like Mark Hyman and Trip Brown was there too, right? And
these were later years, yeah. When I got there in 1973, there was Nick Garris, Dave Leone, and Rick Kay. Rick Kay left a few months after I got there, so it was really only the three of us for a long time in the tough years. I remember one year where the only booking I had in the whole month of August was Bob Seger playing a club in Lansing, Michigan for 2 nights. And we were on commission, so that was a tough month for me. And we had to pay our own bills, so I had to pay my own phone bill that month.
You would think Bob Seger could play bigger than a club, but I'm guessing this is not on the current tour cycle.
Oh, no. This was 1973, 1974 when he's still struggling. And many times Bob wanted to get out of the business because of the ups and downs. Every time he released a record, the record company would go under. He always had something happen to him, but he stuck in the business for the longest time. When he was nominated for Best New Artist, I think, at the Grammys, he had actually been at it for like a dozen years, so he was really, really resilient and really stuck in there.
Yeah, it seems like he takes some good pauses between tours. He's not one of those guys like maybe Styx or REO that is always working the road. Like when he tours, you should go see him if you want to see him, because he's probably not going to be around for another 5 years, because he takes really good gaps between tours now.
Bob, in my experience, when I worked with him back in the 70s, didn't love to perform. He performed because it was something you really had to do to make money back then and promote your records, but he didn't love to perform. I don't know Bob now. I haven't worked with Bob since the 70s. Bob was another one of those acts that DMA helped break, and then he left and went to a New York agent.
Sounds like DMA got screwed a lot.
Well, all the local agencies did. Talk to Alex Hodges about what he went through in Atlanta and so many other agents around the country.
Alex Hodges was an agent. Just kidding. Don't beat me up.
A damn good one, too. And a manager, as you know.
He managed an act?
He sure did. Stevie Ray Vaughan, amongst others.
But I love Alex.
Alex is great. He's a great promoter. He was a great agent. So, love Alex.
Not a great manager?
Did I say promoter? I mean, Alex was a great manager and a great agent. Sorry.
Okay, so you didn't mean he was a great promoter.
No, I don't remember him promoting. I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. He does promote. That's right. He does do that now. No, he's been promoting for a long time.
Alex is a triple threat. He's a great promoter, agent, and manager.
He is. I mean, he's doing fantastic work with all those people that need the lantern.
And he wears a scarf better than anyone in the industry.
And a hat. He was the first one with the hat. Now it's cool, so.
That's
but
awesome.
Back at DMA, so Bob left us. But we had another guy at DMA back in those days called Ted Nugent. And I started there in 1973, and Bob and Ted were there. Alice had gone.
The Motor City Madman.
The Motor City Madman. He was with us. And, he was wearing the loincloth back then and swinging from things and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. But nothing had happened with him yet. And finally, he put Derek St. Holmes in the band to sing and write songs with him. And just after that, I got Ted a show in Lansing, Michigan, opening for Aerosmith. David Krebs, who was Aerosmith's manager, was at that show. He loved Ted, signed Ted, got Ted an Epic record deal, and the rest is history. That's how it happened for Ted.
Different time. We were talking about earlier in the week when we off tape that some of the development was able to be brought upon by a label believing enough and financing an act heavily enough. Whereas there's so much white noise now that the odds of making it just because a label's throwing money at something is so much more or less likely. But then if you had a good product and there was a label that threw enough money behind it and believed enough in it and worked it hard enough, it wasn't guaranteed, but you had an actual shot of breaking an act if you believed in it enough with enough system, if it was a good enough product.
You had a better shot. Back then, labels would release only a few hundred artists every year, and in all those multiple categories. not just rock. So
Not
there wasn't
a
that
label putting out 100 categories, but all the labels
all
would put out.
of them together.
Yeah,
With
so
a few hundred releases. And
so basically what WIA does by themselves in a year, the whole industry would do.
Yeah, so you could keep track of what was going on, and of course that they would put money behind the acts that they were putting out. So you had a better shot if you had label support. But there were other ways to break back then. Did it with a band called Triumph. It was one of the bands I signed at GMA when I was there. This band, Triumph from Canada, had never played a date in the United States. So they had a plan on how they wanted to break in America. Either we at DMA were just chumps, or we were really open to it. I don't remember which. But they came to us with this plan, and we bought into it. And the plan was that they would come to America where they'd never headlined, never had a bit of airplay, and headline shows in 2,000 and 3,000 seaters. Now, the way we do this is that we would offer this show to the promoter, and the promoter would get somewhere from between $3,000 and $5,000 for radio to support the show. And the band would only take $2,500 for sound and lights and no guarantee. Well, promoters took that left and right. I mean, that's a great deal because back then, $3,000 to $5,000 was pretty much your budget to promote a show. So Triumph, we booked like that, with like 25 dates, and they were all successful.
So basically the band was foregoing their guarantee to bring production, and then they were spending money to market the shows themselves. So all you had to do was get out of their way and help them load in.
Well, the brilliant part of it was the production they owned. They had built it in Canada off of what they were doing up there, and they owned it. So that money was going right in their pocket. So that was a guarantee. And the money to promote the show, the $3,000 to $5,000, that came from RCA Records, not from them. So that was the tour support going to buy radio.
I remember tour support.
Yes, I do too.
So when you were breaking acts in the rock genre, which you were heavily influenced by across your entire careers, the better mainstream rock acts and the early metal acts, album covers were all you had to interact with the act on the album cycle. Maybe the album folded out, you had the front and the back, but people would just have that album, and that was the only art they had, but they would memorize the band's face. They knew the art inside and out. Now we've got no J-cards, no album art. You download the album, and there is no interaction, but there's all of these other avenues, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, where the act can get you out images and what have you, tour admets. But there's less understanding of who the act is when they walk into a room. You could be standing next to the lead singer of a brand new band that is everywhere on the top of the charts, and you may not know it, but back in the day, just that one piece of album art cover, and everybody would know a rock star when they walked in the room. Have we lost something by losing the album art?
Definitely. And what you're talking about sort of is a double-edged sword, because yes, there was mystery back then. You bought a record sometimes, and you really didn't know what was in there. I bought Led Zeppelin because of the cover, and it was in the right bin. But anyway, I bought it, took it home, started listening to it. That's why I bought Led Zeppelin before I ever heard about the band.
Was it any good?
I don't remember. I probably threw away. Robert, I'm kidding. So there was mystery to the band, and mystery was part of it back then, too, in that you never knew what a band looked like until you saw them live, so you had to buy a ticket to see them. So yes, now you have so many more avenues to see and find out what a band looks like because you don't have the cover, you don't have the album art and all that kind of stuff. But because everybody's so generic right now, and there's so many bands, yes, you can stand next to the lead singer and not know who they are. You would not have had that with Robert Plant.
I know that Ted Templeman produced Van Halen 1984 because I stared at that album cover while I played at that vinyl out front and back. As a fan, there's no reason at 7 years old that I should care who Ted Templeman is, but that is instilled in me because I held that album in my hand while I played it and studied it like everyone else did that had any other album. Like, we've lost that.
I did the same thing with The Who. The Who Sell Out. I love that record so much. And I wore that record out, playing it over and over again. It was so amazing. So yes, I did that too. And everybody saw so much on the back of those records when they were reading things, the thank yous. And I guess I got quite a few thank yous because a few years ago we hired an agent. And I had my first conversation with his agent after he was hired. And he said, I got to tell you, just about every album I bought when I was a kid had your name on it.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I was so honored that he read my name and remembered.
All right, so you develop your career to the point where you're going to jump to L.A. and go to a bigger agency from DMA.
Well, I'll go back to DMA for a second. So I signed Triumph. They had this new way of doing things. I signed Sammy Hagar. I had Ted Nugent on the road doing some dates in the Southwest, and I needed a support act. And Sammy Hagar had just left Montrose. I knew who Sammy was in Montrose. And all the radio stations down there told me that Sammy was going to happen in the Southwest. So I thought, this is a good one, so I'm going to grab this. Sammy was with ICM. And so I called ICM, and I talked to 3 different agents, and nobody knew who the fuck Sammy was. I'm sorry, can I say that?
You say whatever you want. You're fucking Troy Blake.
Nobody knew who he was. So finally I found out who his manager was, and it was this guy named Ed Leffler. So I called up Ed Leffler. I said, Eddie, you don't know me from Adam. I'm at a small company in Detroit. He goes, I know who you got. I said, we have this headliner, Ted Nugent, who's playing his tour, and I'd really love to have Sammy Hagar be the opening act, but I called your agency and talked to the X, Y, and Z. Nobody knew who Sammy was. So I have 2 questions for you, Ed. A, would you like Sammy to tour with Ted Nugent? And B, would you like an agent who knows how the fuck your artist is? He said yes and yes.
Win.
So that's how I got Sammy, and that's how I got my first mentor in the business. Ed Leffler's a real legendary manager who unfortunately is not with us anymore, but he was an agent for the Beatles. I mean, geez.
How good could he be? How hard would it book to be? That's not impressive. If you can sell a Nelson date, you're a great agent. Anybody could sell the Beatles. I don't think you really need a good agent to sell that band. Buying some of the other acts, though, that takes some talent. You know the difference between a good agent and a bad agent. A good agent can sell Engelbert Humperdinck. Keith Nesmith is a great agent.
Yeah, Keith Nesmith is a great agent.
Let's talk about what brought you to L.A.
I left DMA. And I came to LA to work at Magna Artists, which was a small company again, like DMA. Had two offices over New York and LA. And Ron Rainey was the one running the LA office. And he really brought me to LA because he knew my experience with Ted Nugent and Triumph and Sammy Hagar and all the rock bands. And he wanted me to book the Blizzard of Oz tour because he had signed Ozzy Osbourne through his relationship.
Cool is that?
I know, through his relationship with ELO. And Don Arden, who was ELO's manager, had the record label. Same thing with Ozzy. And of course, Don's...
What a great show that would be, ALO and Ozzy Osbourne.
No, it never happened. But Don's daughter, Sharon, was also the co-manager, along with Don. So I came out to L.A. to really book that tour. And it was not easy. This was Ozzy's first record. Nobody knew it was going to happen. You know, it was Epic Records, but they were great. But nobody knew it was going to happen this record. So it was really unknown what was going to happen.
But he'd already been in Sabbath, right?
Oh, he was out of Sabbath.
So it wasn't like he was an unknown quantity.
No, but what was unknown was what was going to happen as a solo artist, yeah.
But it wasn't like he was a brand new artist.
No.
It was just a new formation.
No. So Ron brings me out to book this tour. And I'm booking the tour, but meanwhile they're doing the rehearsals in San Bernardino, which is where we also had the first show. And Sharon is managing, and Sharon's helping put the band together because they're still auditioning people. And I don't know Sharon very well, but I'm getting to know her, and I know she's tough as nails. We're working these shows, and I mean, she's fair, but she's tough.
Was she already married to Ozzy at that point, or were they together?
Oh, no, they were she was manager, he was artist. Years later, they got married. But I found out how tough she was because one time during rehearsals, one of the, I guess it was a tech of some kind, argued with her. So she just hauled off and kicked him in the nuts. And the guy went down on the ground. And there was somebody there that was auditioning for one of the parts in the band. He left. That was it. He was done. He wouldn't be part of this. You don't argue with her, Sharon, if you're a guitar tech. I could. He couldn't. So that brought me to L.A. But Ron Rainey left Magna and started falling apart. So I decided that I should move on.
Magna started falling apart, or Ron Rainey did?
No, Ron Rainey went to management. He's done very, very well for himself. God bless Ron Rainey. He's done fantastic.
Because Magna's gone now. So that was
Magna's
the end of that.
gone. Okay. So, but I left Magna too later in the same year, 1981. Tom Ross hired me over at ICM. This was
Wait a minute. You said you'd only been in 3 agencies in your life, but you just said DMA, Magna, ICM, and I know you were at APA.
I guess it was 4.
That's what I hate about agents. Well, yeah, it's 3 plus 1.
It's like 3 plus 1 because I was only at Magna like 6 months, so it's 3 plus 1, 3.1. So I went over to ICM. Tom Ross hired me. I took Triumph and Sammy Hagar with me to ICM.
Did Sammy's hair, the trademark hair, already happen back then?
Oh, it was happening when I met him. It was big. It was always big. But Sammy, the first tour was that one with Ted Nugent. And that was just after I signed him. And so I went down to Texas. The first show was in Houston. I went down to Texas to see the show. And Sammy goes on stage, and it's a Texas crowd, tough crowd, Houston. And he's doing great. He's really doing fantastic. He's winning the crowd over. He's doing really well. But there was something missing. And I could tell what it was. So Sam and I got together in his dressing room after the show. And Sammy said, "What'd you think?" I said, You're amazing. You're a great live performer. You're everything I ever heard about you. And you're going to do fantastic. But you got to lose the baggy pants and the sandals. This is not San Francisco. This is Texas. Get some jeans, tight jeans, and cowboy boots and rock and roll. He said, "Okay." Next show is in tight jeans and cowboy boots. From then on, he didn't wear the baggy pants again until he was in Van Halen. And who cared then? Because you're in Van Halen, you wear whatever you want.
Now, and I know we're jumping ahead a little bit, but Bret Michaels, I am told, is by far the hardest working marketer of anyone in the industry. That he will do any media, anything to promote the show, anything to promote the album. The guy is committed to making the show and the album a success. Has that been your understanding as you're working with them for so long?
I would say, yeah, after working with him for 25 years, I would say he's one of the hardest working. You got to give him credit. There might be 5 of the people that work as hard as him. Maybe Gene Simmons. I think Sammy Hagar's always worked that hard. And there's a few others, of course. But no, there's no better PR machine for Bret Michaels than Bret Michaels, for sure.
Let's talk about the development of national tour promoters. You had the Black Crowes. The Crowes opened for ZZ Top, and Don Fox at Beaver was ZZ Top's promoter pretty much everywhere, and the Crowes supported. And then they wound up giving most of the tour, or a good majority of it, the headline tour, to Don early on. Did that change the game? I mean, this is before the internet, when you've got a guy out of one office booking half or the entire country for an artist?
Well, it wasn't a game changer at that time. It certainly was unique in some ways. But I had been working with...
I got that right? The details, it was ZZ? Is that right?
It was ZZ Top that the Black Crowes were opening for. It was their first support slot on the tour. It was the first tour that Chris got them kicked off of. So I had worked with tour promoters going all the way back to DMA. Concerts West was the tour promoter for Bad Company, as they were for Elvis, as they were for other bands. And it was my first time I ever got a laminate from that tour because I had Ted Nugent on the Bad Company tour, and they gave me a laminate. I said, "What's this?" "Oh, this is something you wear." "Okay."
Oh, they invented that?
They invented that. Bad Company did, and Concerts West. And I think it was John Meglin who came up and handed me this pass. I was used to stickies. But no, you wear this. Okay, wear it every day.
Meglin was doing the history of Concerts West on the podcast yesterday. And it's a fascinating story. I'm very excited to air that podcast. But it's funny because we didn't get through the AEG years so much as Concert West re-involved at AEG and them leaving Pace and restarting that. But the story of Concerts West from the early days on is a really impressive thing.
And it was the first tour promoter I dealt with, and that was around 1979. So it goes all the way back then.
And Bauer Kinnear was doing some of that too with like Van Halen, right? They were running across the country with all that stuff. So apparently something in the Northwest about his promoters that like to jump into other people's markets. Huh?
Well, Kiss would do that too. They'd sell a bunch of markets to somebody too. So if you had enough money. You fast forward to the Black Crowes and Don Fox. Well, I've been working with Don Fox on Rush. I was the day-to-day guy for Rush. Bill Olson was the agent. But I was a day-to-day guy working with Ray Daniels in Toronto. Don Fox had half their tour. He would do lots and lots of dates with them. And Don was a really good promoter. That's why people would work with him. You sold him a date, he was going to milk every ticket out of that market. He would do everything he could to milk every ticket out. He's very good.
He's got to be getting up there these days, Don, right?
He's probably a little bit older than I am, but in great shape. Last time I saw him, he's in fantastic shape. But Don was a guy, he's a serious guy, very serious guy. Anyway, Ray Daniels and I, we used to like to fool around with Don because he's so serious and you could really pull his chain sometimes. So a couple of times we did some things. Well, I remember one time he wanted Rush to play a college town and play the college facility. We told him that the guys in Rush were concerned with how many people actually live on the campus and how many people don't live on the campus. And the way to know that is to know how many bike racks there are on campus. So Don sent somebody to the campus to count the bike racks. Finally, we said, Don, it's a joke. Has nothing to do with bike racks. Oh, okay. All right, Troy, what are we doing next? So maybe I don't know if the next tour, right?
Oh, that's awesome.
Next story, forget the bike racks thing. So we're going to play Denver, right? And there's 2 or 3 venues you can play in Denver. So I told Don, I said, look, Don, Getty is very concerned with the altitude. You know, he's got to sing the whole set. And there's not much air up there. It's a mile high. We want to play the venue that's at the lowest altitude. Will you send somebody with an altimeter to all 3 venues and tell me who has the lowest altitude? He did it. He comes back, gives me the altitude. I said, Don, it was a joke.
This was the Black Crowes show?
No, this was Rush.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's probably some jokes between Pete Angelos and Don and I and that
Barry
time.
Fay must have lost his shit if he's selling Rush to Don in Denver. That must have gone over well.
Well,
Barry must have lost it when you sold Black Crowes. And I know Don did the Black Crowes Jellyfish show at the Auditorium Theater in Denver. That must have been a big problem.
Oh, Barry didn't like it. Bill Graham didn't like Don in his backyard. A lot of people didn't like it, but it worked.
Let's talk about Fleetwood Mac for a second.
Sure.
So Fleetwood Mac does a reunion tour. You put them back together and put them on the road right around when the Clintons had them as their victory song for the campaign.
Don't stop thinking about tomorrow.
They do the reunion for the campaign, and then you guys put the band back together and put them on the road at the height of Clinton going right back in the office and then coming back out on stage for his big, huge, that moment of like, he put Fleetwood back together. This is how powerful Bill Clinton is and how cool Bill Clinton is.
Well, that was Howard Kaufman. It wasn't Bill Clinton.
Yeah,
Howard Kaufman did that.
Yeah, the industry knows that, but the nation thinks it was Bill Clinton.
Let them think what they want. But Howard, I think, had more power than Bill Clinton.
But you were the agent.
Yes.
You guys rolled out an arena tour that was unparalleled in success. It was one of the steeper priced tours to ever go back on the road. And there was no question that this thing was going to be hit out of the ballpark.
Well, now you talk about selling tours to one promoter, national promoter. This was my very first time I sold a tour to really one promoter.
This is Pace, right?
It was an amalgamation between Pace and Bruce Camp, who was with the company in Cleveland at the time. I don't remember the name of the company, but it was Bruce Camp and Louis Messina together. And they came up with 40 shows they would do at the price that Howard wanted. Which was not, it was a big price back then, but they guaranteed the 40 shows. It was a huge guarantee. So they took the risk between Pace and the company in Cleveland. So it was only 40 shows because Christine McVie said for the reunion she would only do 40 shows. That's all. So we only did 40 shows. Now, after they went on sale, they all sold out way in advance. Of course, the band wanted to do 40 more. Howard wanted to do 40 more. Or 10 more, whatever. Christine McVie said, no, that was it. 40. I'm not doing any more. So that's why the first tour was only 40 shows. The next tour we did, when Christine didn't tour with us, we did 125 shows around the world.
It was amazing. I had to tell you, I was booking 1,000-seaters at that point. And I don't know.
You were buying my 1,000-seat shows.
Well, it was funny because I called, and we'd known each other for a while, and you've always been super cool to me. And I called and was like, you're putting Fleetwood Mac back together. It's like, yeah, it's going out. I'm excited about it. I'm like, I want to submit. And you're like, well, it's a tour deal, but you can call Louis and see if you can work it into you can cut a deal with him to work you in. But the deal's been cut. I can't break off Denver. And it was way over my head, and you knew it. But he's like, but call Louis Messina. He was like, I'll give you his direct number. You can have the conversation, and if they want to cut you in, I'll recommend it. And I was like, okay. So I called Louis, and it was so funny because a couple days later, you called me. He's like, you really called him? I was like, yeah. He's like, I didn't think you were going to have the balls to call Louis. But it was like one of those like, all right, I get that you called me, but you really called Louis and asked him for a piece of a sold-out arena show.
Not many people did, so you're right. You had balls to do that.
Now, how do you feel about that? A local promoter with boots on the ground that knows the market inside and out, or a promoter who knows how to market the act particularly better than anyone else because they've had more experience in marketing that act. Not necessarily works in the market, what works for the act. And maybe that sells more tickets overall because they specialize in the act, not the market.
That's a fine line. Discern which side to be on is not easy. Many times, you have to make that choice. Okay, this person has a feel for the band, but this person has a feel for their market. So it's very hard to sometimes make that choice.
It's amazing how much people get over that you not tell them the last show when they want the next show, though.
Well, that's just it. That's something I learned. That they'll only be mad at you until they want something else from you. So if you have a good roster and you have a good list and you have a good history, people are going to continue to work with you no matter what they say. Because everybody in this business has disappointments. They don't get this show or that show. The hardest thing was, and going back to Howard Kaufman and starting to sell tour deals and different things, was telling people who had done the show or the band from the 1,000-seater like you to the 10,000-seater, you didn't get the show this time because you didn't offer enough. And that was a new paradigm in the business that Howard Kaufman created, was it didn't matter what your history was. It mattered how much you offered. And that's something Howard taught me in the late 80s, early 90s, when he had signed Poison, that there was a shift in the business. And there was a shift in the business from the Frank Barcelona, Bill Olsen days of, okay, no manager ever talked to the promoters. No promoters talked to anybody but the agents. And the agents had...
And it was taboo, right? You got in trouble for going around the agent talking to the manager.
Holy moly.
By the way, just to take a second, the way that people used to be able to talk to each other in the industry was amazing. How Barry Fay would actually yell at agents was amazing to me. Like, I came up in Denver. When you yell at an agent and you hang up on them, you're not talking to them again for a while or if ever. Now, it's a service industry. But Barry would berate and yell, and it was amazing. That I was like, how do you get away with that?
Barry, Bill Graham, there were some great yellers in this business, really amazing yellers. And you had to have thick skin, listen to it, maybe learn from it, because there might be a message in there, or you yell back, so you just get right back at them. And I don't know if they'd appreciate that, but certainly put them back on their heels. Oh, you were going to take that. So, yeah, it was a different thing to have people yelling at you. And that happened, but it was the next day it was over.
When did the industry, because that's gone, when did the industry get kinder and gentler and more relationship friendly?
Well, I think it came with this change where there was more communication. Because now the promoters were talking to the managers. So the agents didn't have ultimate power. So there's no reason for a promoter to yell at an agent when he could call the manager if he wanted to. And he couldn't get yelled at. I used to have promoters call me and say, hey, Bill Olsen called me. Do you know what it's about? No, I don't know what it's about. Call him back. I'm afraid to, because he's going to turn me a new bumhole. So they were afraid to talk to Bill Olsen because usually when he called, it was not good. It was like Bill Graham. He had people that I worked with sold them shows, but when Bill Graham called, it usually wasn't good. Or if I had to call Bill, it was usually I'm going to get yelled at. And that happened once in a while. Bill and I had some great yelling things. The best one was this. I'll tell us a quick story. My first day on the green is Ted Nugent. And I never had a big show.
In San Francisco.
In San Francisco, the big day on the greens were like 5 or 6 shows a year. Oakland Coliseum, 60,000 people. Historic shows, right? Every year. Big shows, big bands. So my first day on the green is with Ted Nugent playing Oakland Coliseum to 60,000 people. It sold out in advance. A week before the show, or actually months before the show, Bill's people call me and say, look, we're going to decorate the stage. We're going to do this really amazing jungle motif because Ted swings down in his loincloth. He'll love it. It'll be lions and tigers. Oh, my. I said, okay. So I get a call like 5 days before the show. The crew had shown up. I get a call from the guy at the head of the crew. He says, Ted's never going to take the stage. So why not? He said, clowns, they have big clown heads on every side of the stage. I said, what do you mean clown heads? They said lions and tigers. Well, you got some of those behind the stage, but it's all big clown heads and covering the PA system. Huge, 60 feet tall. I said, oh, shit. Ted's not going to like that. So I called David Krebs, who's the manager, and I said, look, Ted's going to hate this. Do you want me to call Ted? He said, don't bother calling Ted. Call Bill Graham and tell him to take him down. Me? Yeah, you. Okay. So I called Bill Graham, and I said, Bill, you got to take these down. Ted ain't going to play. I mean, the phone melted in my hand with Bill screaming. He was fucking livid. He was crazed. So I listened and took it. I said, Bill, Ted said he'll cancel the show if we don't take the clowns down. We'll take him down. That was it. Boom. 3 days later, I get a call from Danny Shear at the time, I think. Greg Perloff was there too, but Danny Shear was the guy I was talking to. And Danny Shear said, They imported from Los Angeles this like jungle netting and stuff they were going to put up instead of the clown heads. I said, great. They did that. Go to the show. It looks great. Ted swings out on his rope. He's got the loincloth on. It's perfect. Everything works great. Right? Terrific. Peter Mensch was the tour accountant for Ted Nugent back then, ran in the accounting booth or trailer after the show. And we're doing the settlement. Bill tries to sell us or make us pay for the clown heads. So I'm not paying for the damn clown heads. That was your fault, not mine. Nobody cleared it with us. We argued for 2 hours about clown heads. Finally, they took that. So I thought it was into that. A year later, I'm opening Billboard magazine, and there's this double truck ad in the middle of the ad on the magazine. It's for Journey playing Day on the Green, and they got these 2 great big clown heads. So Bill sold them to Journey. Bill never lost, ever.
I love it. That's great. Let's talk about the career in a big point of view. Like, of all the acts you've worked with over the years, who was your favorite? Who was the easiest to have as a client? That's 2 different questions there.
Yeah, nobody's easy. If they were, then people would walk off the street and do this. Some are more difficult than others, and some are more enjoyable than others, but nobody's more enjoyable than Robert Plant.
Robert Plant was your favorite?
When Bill Curbishley called me, I had worked with Bill Curbishley and Robert Plant in the 80s. Once again, I was a day-to-day guy when Bill Olson was the responsible agent for Robert Plant. So I got to know Bill and Robert a little bit back in the 80s. So I'm at APA in the 90s, and I'd signed Judas Priest, who was with Bill Curbishley and Jane Andrews. I'd been working with them for a couple of years and doing, I guess, a pretty good job, because Bill calls up one day and said, Troy, would you like to work with Robert again? I said, let me think about that for a minute. Fuck yeah, I want to work with Robert again. I said, great, Robert's going to call you in 10 minutes. Oh, okay. So 10 minutes later, phone rings. After my assistant gets done melting at her desk, she comes in and tells me that Robert Plant's on the phone. And this Robert, I mean, you know his voice. He's got that high voice, and, you know, it's a kind, wonderful, high voice. He makes you feel very comfortable. And so Robert and I start talking about old days and stuff like that. And I did most of the day-to-day stuff with Robert. Bill Curbishley, I always felt, you know, filled in constantly on what was going on. Robert did day-to-day with me about where to play, how he wanted it out, who he liked working with, all these things.
Because he had a business mind. He really got it.
He's got a great business mind. And a memory like you can't believe. I thought all those days when you heard about all the drugs they did and all the stuff they were doing.
Apparently it helps your memory. It's like Ginkgo Bologna.
It certainly helped his. I mean, he's talking about smart. Robert's one of the smartest men I've ever met in my life, next to Howard Kaufman and Irving Azoff.
Let me ask you one more question before I let you get back to work.
Sure.
All the agents coming up in the industry, what can you advise them about how to look at the industry? You have any advice for upcoming agents and even younger promoters?
I tell all my agents that are upcoming the same thing. You have to have passion for this business. And you prove your passion by how hard you'll work on an act you believe in. So only sign an act that you really, really believe in. Because if you have to fill a Tuesday between Des Moines and Denver, and it's a month away, and you're not staying in the office till midnight to fill that date, you don't have the passion. You have to have that kind of passion. Because not only is your career dependent on this, their career, their families, the families of the crew, everybody that's involved. You have to have that passion for the artist and for what you're doing for that artist and what you're giving to them.
And what would you advise promoters coming up in the business? What's the best advice you could give them?
Take $100,000, put it in the backyard, throw gasoline on it, burn it, and find a different career.
I wish you had told me that 15 years ago. Thank you so much for taking the time.
My pleasure, anytime.
A great Troy Blakely. Troy is iconic. The artists he handles, his career that he's developed and discovered all of these amazing artists. Whether it's the biggest of big like Fleetwood Mac, whether it's the Red Rocker, it just doesn't matter. It is amazing. He's got a great ear and his stories are even better. We love Troy Blakely on this podcast. He's amazing.
Mike Luba, Madison S. Presents Promoter 101.
Of course, it's not Promoter 101, the podcast, without some tweets of the week. We're going to take a moment, break down the madness, happenings in the music business as tweeted by Dan on Twitter. He is at the Jew. Let's get to it. The term added by overwhelming demand translates into how to fill an extra night off in the same market.
Of course, we normally do these as 1+1 deals, meaning we hope that we get to a second show because we're pretty sure that there's enough demand there for 2. But we want to make sure first, so we put the first one up hoping to roll into the second show.
A special intimate venue means we can't sell the big room anymore.
When you just spit it just right, it sounds so fucking cool. Special intimate venue.
Writing urgent in all caps in the subject line of an email means nothing. If it really mattered, your boss would have called my cell.
Well, this one kind of speaks for itself, doesn't it, Luke?
It's true, although I put that in the email to you all the time. That does it for Promoter 101 Tweets of the Week. You can follow Dan on Twitter. He's at The Jew.
Hi, it's Marcy Allen, president of Mac Presents, and honored to be on Promoter 101.
This week's AGI's Nick Storch joins us for Turn the Tables. It's when an upcoming guest has a chance to turn the tables on us and ask us a question instead to catch up and just get a little bit of payback.
Thanks so much for joining us in New York, Nick. What is on your mind?
So guys, I've got to ask, what is the deal with the merch rates? We don't ask for a piece of the bar, but you guys hold firm on these merch rates, and for a lot of my clients, this is how they actually eat.
Luke, go ahead and add on before I answer, because both you get your shots in now, having a manager and agent simultaneously beat up on me. I'm gonna do it, but go ahead, get your 2 cents in.
I get it when there are board level rates and it's set by some PAC or some venue that has some sort of advisory thing on that. But just to beat up on the rack rate on the merchandise rates is not a terrible ask for it. And you and your deals are transparent enough that I know you're not taking a piece of that. So what's the point of not just beating some of these venues over the fucking head and asking for 100% of merchandise?
I mean, I do understand sometimes if it's a developing act, you might barely get out. But when it starts to be a real bar and you're participating, I'm sure you are more than you share. But come on, do you really have to grind us so hard on that?
All right, and I think that if you check with the people that I do a lot of business with that you like a lot, like the Andy Summers of this world, you'll know for 100% I don't take a dime from merch unless we operate the venue. With that said, anytime a manager or an agent comes to me and asks to go get the merch rate, I will go fight for them and try and get the merch rate, even if I think it's stupid.
Which you've made abundantly, almost hurtfully clear every time that I ask for it.
And why do you feel like it's stupid?
Some managers want 100%. Sometimes we've already played the venue and paid the venue good money in merch, and it's too much of an ask to go back and act like they're stupid. So there's probably a compromise of, hey, we're going to do great business, we're going to do multiple nights, we're going to kill it on merch. How about you bring it down a little bit versus coming back and saying, take nothing. It doesn't seem realistic. There's no middle ground there. But we're the middle here. We're not the venue. So we're in there fighting the fight. And it's a service business, but we don't make any money on the merch either way. So we're in there just trying to make you guys happy. And I spend a good amount of time fighting for merch deals to make sure that our artists are happy. And I'm happy doing it, but I want to make sure the venue doesn't get so pissed off at us that if something springs up later that we need another favor for, which is, hey, I need you guys not to charge a facility fee or service charges on the fan club tickets, or I need you guys to be cool about us doing Groupon because it's not selling, but you're going to get the F&B on those tickets. So I need to save my IOUs with the venue for you anyway, but to make sure the show plays out and to burn them all on a merch rate that's going to piss them off doesn't necessarily make the family happy. I'm fine, though, going in saying, okay, you're 25% across the board. Will you waive recorded because the band's not making shit on it anyway? And can we get it down to 10 if the artist is selling? And maybe they counter, or, hey, is there a buyout that's fair? We're thinking this. What are you thinking? I'm happy to go back and forth and have that fight, but in all realisticness, I'm not pocketing a cent on merch. I spend a ton of time doing it, and the bar stuff is not nearly in play as much as you think it is. It is on the bigger shows when we move past the ballrooms, but when we're doing those clubs and small ballroom shows, it's not in the bar. It comes against a bigger rent, but you guys see that rent, you see the settlement, and it's not like we don't forward settlement to the road manager night of show from the house. It's everything's transparent. Has to be now. It's we're doing so much volume with the same act. If it ever got outed that we were keeping a buck or something that you didn't know about, we wouldn't get all those shows. And I'm not going to lose half a tour with an act that's hopefully going to grow into a full tour over $1 a head. It's just not going to fucking happen.
Of course. It's when you're growing a band, that merch money can make the difference between the band keeping out or the band just saying we can't do it.
Hey, I've been in those vans, you know, it's like 11 guys in a van that isn't a sleeper van, you know, it's just like the smell, the stench, the miles, eating pizza. That difference between 5% off on merch makes a difference on how those guys live on the road. I fucking have been there. I don't have a problem getting those guys the socks when it's on the rider. I know that feeling. And, you know, it's like, it matters. Getting bands through town when they're making $250 or $500, which is also an interesting thing that I think the industry needs to talk about. How come it's always been $250 and $500? The economy of scale has changed for years of the value of $1, but that $250 has never fucking changed.
Well, I think that it starts to become people say things like, well, you should just be happy you got the opportunity, and that's why it's so low.
I didn't just say that to you on the merch deal.
You know, we live in a country where an extremely greedy place.
Nick Storch, thanks for being on Turn the Tables.
Thanks for having me.
You gotta love Nick. I can't wait to hear his interview. That's coming up in a couple of weeks, Luke.
He reps Ghost. They're having an incredible moment. Can't wait to talk to them about their current success.
Hey, this is Kevin French, and I'm on Promoter 101.
It's time to peek behind the curtain in one of the greatest minds in the current state of this music industry. He is best known for being the producer of the hit tour Peppa Pig at Red Light Management. This is Mr. Jonathan Shank. And for those of you not familiar with Peppa Pig, this is serious, huge business. Family entertainment is crazy big. Jonathan, welcome to Promoter 101.
Promoter 101 at the Sunset Marquee, joined with a very good friend of mine, Jonathan Shank. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, the beautiful Sunset Marquee.
So you are the king of the kid shows. Mr. Family Entertainment.
Yes, family entertainment. It's been quite a journey, and we're really excited about the tours that we have out now and working on some new ones that we're excited about for the coming years, and certainly feel that it's just been a blessing all around to bring these shows to families all over the country.
Outstanding. But the people that knew you back when, knew you before you were Mr. Family Entertainment, and the world of the Grateful Dead was influenced by the business that you worked in.
Oh my goodness, so much. You know, I went to Tulane University in New Orleans and got to spend quite a few seasons out on the road seeing the Grateful Dead, and, you know, was highly influenced by them, both, you know, from a cultural standpoint, but also from a, you know, business model and marketing perspective. I thought that they really were innovators in so many different spaces, and, you know, was really able to, you know, gain a lot of knowledge and also kind of experience just understanding how touring worked and routing worked and all of those kinds of things, and was lucky enough to come into their world for a few years and manage Mickey Hart and Bill Kreutzmann.
And it developed into a couple of other acts in the same genre.
Absolutely, yeah. So after Tulane, I had moved out to Los Angeles and in the mid-90s and took a job at a boutique booking agency called American Artists, and really learned a lot at a tender age from Ron Rainey and, rest his soul, Peter Shields and Michael Gaiman. And we had, our roster was pretty eclectic at the time. We had Jazz is Dead. We had Dave Mason, Robbie Krieger, the Marshall Tucker Band, Jefferson Starship, Alvin Lee, Al Stewart, and we put together some pretty amazing packages with, you know, Dave Mason and Jim Capaldi with Leon Russell. And that experience led into managing other jam bands like Particle and the Disco Biscuits as the fusion between electronic and jam music started to come to light in the early 2000s.
Now, how do you jump from the world of the hippie jam, Grateful Dead vibe into the world of Imagination Movers and Fresh Beat Band, Peppa Pig? And you keep expanding this, Victoria Justice. The field is huge for you.
I really don't look at it through too much of a different glass, to be honest with you. I mean, certainly one of the things that we were successful with in kind of the early 2000s was really a lot of grassroots marketing, and this was prior to the explosion of digital formatted music. So we were just like a guerrilla army trying to get the word out about all of our different bands, like, you know, Particle and et cetera. And working with Particle is what led me to Mickey Hart, and ultimately that's really, you know, where I learned how to truly produce a show, because Mickey had so many side projects and so many charitable events that I needed to produce. It was actually Mickey's wife one day that pulled me aside and she said, you know, you're a really great manager, but I think you're actually a producer too. And I'd never really thought of that before, you know, that notion of being a producer. But Mickey had me working on all these events with the Kyoto Monks and these events for Walter Cronkite and in DC and Vibes for Peace at the Warfield and the Nancy Pelosi inauguration. And ultimately, in addition to managing Mickey, my role really was producing these events. I didn't even realize I was doing it at the time. And she was the first person to really open my eyes to say, hey, I think you're a producer. So that really bridged the gap for me. And it kind of shifted my, you know, mentality a little bit in terms of how I looked at both management, you know, and also at the larger world of producing shows.
And historically, you have done a bunch of these producing musical events, tributes, and what have you. There was a Doors thing, correct?
Oh my goodness, that was so amazing. Yeah, so there's actually a really, really incredible story behind this show. So I had a big birthday a year and a half ago. And those that know me know that I am a diehard Meters fan and George Porter Jr. fan. And so I contacted George and got him to come out to Los Angeles for my party. And I'd previously put George into the Mickey Hart Band, so we had a long relationship. And so during that time, I said to George, we should have Robbie Krieger come down and play with you at the party. And during the sound check, Robbie had said to me, hey, we never really did anything for Ray. You know, we should, you know, put something together. The birthday party was in May. Shortly after the New Year, I got a phone call from my friend Jeff Jampol, who manages the Doors estate, who said that he had spoken to John and Robbie and they wanted to put something together for Ray. The only catch was it needed to happen in 3 weeks over Grammy weekend. So we hustled and we pulled it together, and it was an amazing sold-out show. And we had, you know, Government Mule and Taylor Hawkins and just an incredible array of performers. And it was just obviously the crown jewel was having Robbie and John perform together and really celebrate the music of the Doors. And celebrate the legacy of Ray and raise money for a good cause.
What's going on? What's the next big kids tour that we're all going to be begging for tickets for, man?
Couple things. So first of all, we're really excited because Peppa Pig is now the #1 show on Nickelodeon, and we've just finished our first production, which was Peppa Pig's Big Splash. We had 185 shows of that production. Then we're launching this fall Peppa Pig Surprise in 75 markets. So it's about 90 shows, that tour.
As in surprise, Mom and Dad, you have to pay to see the show again.
Yeah, and you know, we've just found out that there's a new commitment from Nickelodeon to produce more episodes. So ultimately, Peppa Pig is something that's going to continue on for many years, and we have obviously a lot of plans for that going into 2018 and 19. And I'm going to give Steiny a little exclusive here on Promoter 101.
Breaking news, Promoter 101 exclusive. Lay it on me.
So next year, we're really excited. We're going to be producing the 25th anniversary of the Power Rangers. So Power Rangers Live is in our future, and we're really, really excited about that, and just starting to kind of dive into the creative and figure out how to bring, you know, such an amazing property to life. But it's something that, you know, we're really excited about for 2018, and I think that there's a new season on Nick Jr. of Power Rangers, and this will coincide with that.
Let me ask you about when we grew up, Saturday morning cartoons was massive, right? I mean, we all week long.
I had a set list of cartoons that I would watch. I was like, prior to Grateful Dead, you know, fandom, I loved Saturday morning cartoons, and I would write down kind of the set list of what I was going to watch. Like, you know, 7:30 a.m., you know, Scooby, then 8 a.m. Muppet Babies, then, you know, 8:30 Snorks.
I like that you treated Saturday morning cartoons like it was a festival. Which stage are you hitting?
I didn't even know what set lists were at that time, but actually, if I could find one of those pieces of paper, it would look like it would look like, you know, Muppet Babies into Snorks would look like a Scarlet Fire, I guess, you know.
With that said, Saturday morning cartoons, this was an exciting thing, but advertisers would build around Saturday morning. That's how you found the kid market, because kids were there. This was before cable was everywhere. It was certainly existed, but not everyone had it. But everyone could get morning TV. You could get your Smurfs and your Alvin and the Chipmunks, and, you know, show after show, the feed was there. Now that we don't have that, even though we have Cartoon Network, and you can find cartoons on Netflix, and you can find them anywhere, like in on demand, has it changed the feed a little bit of the access to the kids, even though there are the Disneys and the Nickelodeons and the Sprouts out there?
Access to content is certainly a lot easier, but I think that a lot of kids, for instance, are accessing content of their favorite characters on digital platforms like Netflix and YouTube and Amazon. And what I mean by that is I think that Peppa Pig is one of the most searched kids shows on all of YouTube. So I think that in addition to discovering new content on those platforms, they're also looking for existing content and things that are from other networks.
Okay, so clearly there's more option out there in the market.
Tremendous opportunity for sure.
And there really wasn't as many kid shows touring in our day. You had the circus, you had Ice Capades, Disney on Ice. So Feld kind of owned the market with V, who had Sesame Street at the time. But those were kind of the touring products. There wasn't a lot else out there.
Yeah, there's been a lot of movement in the marketplace. I also think that one thing I think about is that there's a big differentiation now between family entertainment in arenas and family entertainment in theaters. And I think that since the landscape has opened up to do these shows in theaters across America, it has proven to be a much more successful model. And I think that that's really what opened up the can to allow more of these shows to be out there and not to be looked upon as mom-and-pop productions. Because ultimately, you used to have just the arena shows. And I feel that presenting family entertainment in an arena is really challenging. It's really cold. The kids are really far away. And, 10 minutes into it, little kids are sucking on the back of the seat in front of them. You need to have an intimate, interactive experience. I'd rather do multiple shows in a theater than go into an arena.
You've worked for both Irving Azoff and now Corin Capshaw. So two of the best minds in the industry you've
incredible.
Had incredible access to and had the chance to learn and mentor from. What do you think some of the best things you've learned from each of those guys are?
The number one thing I learned from Irving was no matter who was reaching out to you, at what level, whether they were a CEO or an assistant to a CEO or an intern, was to be responsive and to be responsive in a timely manner. And he practiced what he preached. He always responds. He finds a way to respond. And he really instilled that in me, and I know he instilled that in others in the company. And when it's coming from the top down, when you get an email, yeah, of course you might be flying or you might be out at a meeting or whatever, but you know what? Within 24 hours, you can send an email back. And you know what? If you don't know the answer, you can always say, hey, I'm looking into it. I'm not sure yet. I don't know. Give me a minute. Whatever it is. But at least then the person on the other end knows you're engaged. And that was, I think, the most important lesson I learned from Irving.
Let's talk about your rock days for a little while.
Yes.
So at one point, I think when you were with Irving, you got Smashing Pumpkins as the day-to-day, right?
I was doing day-to-day. Yeah, I mean, I had to deal with Billy a lot. And, Jared Paul and Paul Geary and Irving were the managers. And this was kind of like right at the tail end of that reunion, I guess. It was when Jimmy Chamberlain was still in the band with Billy. And yeah, one cool thing is that, and Brad Serling reminded me of this recently, is that I got to introduce Billy to digital downloads. He didn't have any experience with that at the time. And so Brad Serling from nugs.net at livedownloads.com, he came down to LA for a meeting with Billy and I and pitched him on the live download program. And for that tour, we did it. And it was the first time Billy had engaged in that. And that was really cool to kind of connect the dots between, at that time, a format that really largely, I think Metallica was testing at that point, but that it really largely existed in the jam world. And obviously now there's access to streaming and all kinds of different content.
Cool. So my question about Smashing Pumpkins was, you were trusted with this massive rock band's image. They were a legendary act before you were involved. There was already this massive impact. I mean, they're the soundtrack of our youth, right? Like, they're one of those bands that, like, everybody loves that album. Like, they're the Steve Miller of our day. Is there more pressure on you when you're being handed something that already has this legendary status to it not to fuck it up?
I think the pressure with that one is just that Billy is so smart and has such a vision that he is Smashing Pumpkins. So it's really hard for anybody ultimately to manage that brand because he's the chairman and CEO. And I would say that the pressure is to try to be able to align the expectations because he's such a intelligent guy. I think the pressure comes more from that than it does from them being a legendary act. The reason they're a legendary act is because he's such a brilliant artist.
Yeah, they're in that rare club, them, Chili Peppers, Porno for Pyro, because that's when you think of Perry Farrell, you think of Porno for Pyro, right? Not the other one.
It seems like the 90s bands are going to have a minute soon because that's all that's going to be left.
Excellent. So What is next for you? Obviously, you're going to be rolling out the Power Rangers tour, which is exciting news.
All right, so on the management side, Victoria Justice is working on new music, which we're super excited about. And Magic, who's signed to RCA, has a new single coming out in June. And actually, we have tomorrow a Magic and Shakira duet that's being released on Shakira's record. It comes out tomorrow. We're excited about that.
Which by the time you all hear this, it will already be out, so you'll be able to listen to it.
Yeah. So Magic, we're super excited about, and they're obviously touring through the summer. They just did Hangout this weekend, and then I'm managing an 18-year-old from Copenhagen called Benjamin Lassner that everybody is really enthused about. He's just an incredible songwriter. He won the Kids' Choice Award for Favorite Danish Act this year, and he won the MTV Award over Lucas Graham, actually, for Best Danish Artist. And there's just something really, really, really special about this kid, and he's coming back over here in June to meet with some labels and such, but it's a really unique story. Billboard premiered his video a week or so ago, and it seems to be on a really incredible trajectory.
So you got your hands full.
Yeah, everything just, knock on wood, seems to be growing at an exponential pace, and obviously we're launching Teletubbies next year, so we're excited.
Is that a
about
reboot?
that. So the Teletubbies is a reboot. It's on Nick Jr., and it's quickly become one of the top-rated preschool shows on Nick Jr. The second season of the TV show starts in July, and we'll launch the tour next March.
Can't wait for you to roll out the Care Bears and then hopefully Muppet Babies.
Hopefully, something. Yes, well, whatever it is, I'll come here and tell you first.
Awesome. I want to thank you so much for taking the time and talking to us on
Thank
Promoter
you,
101.
It's like talking to my brother, It's amazing.
The great Jonathan Shank. It's no secret, Shank is one of my oldest friends, and I'm just thrilled for his current success.
Hi, this is Jason Kupperman.
Meg White.
Brian Jonas.
Zeddy Clemens.
Jim Glancy.
Kevin French.
It's Marcy Allen.
Phil Ernst. Sean Sada. Sean Striegel. Tim Bohr.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101. Live and direct on Promoter 101.
Got some birthdays to celebrate this week, Dan.
Monday, a bro, Bottle Rocks Festivals, Tom Hoppa.
On Tuesday, celebrating a bunch of them. We got concert promoter Dan Rankin's birthday. We got Kyle Day, Howard Libbs, Reverend Dave Ciancio, and the legendary promoter Louis Messina, celebrating the big 7-0.
Wednesday, Arena GM Michael Marion, and nobody in particular is Doug Kaufman.
On Thursday, we're going to wish a happy birthday the Tucson Rialto's Chris Carey.
On Friday, First Avenue's Nate Kranz, New Frontier Touring's Greg Little, Christian promoter Tim Tabor, and AEG New York Casey McCabe.
On Saturday, wishing a happy birthday to ILMC's Tom Hopewell.
Sunday, Houston Powell, Danny Bland, Works Entertainment, Kyle Novak, big shout out, buddy, and Live Nation's John Hampton, and of course, Moose Scott Scoville.
Happy birthday to all of you from the gang at Promoter 101.
Hi, this is Jason Kupperman from Paradigm, and you're listening to Promoter 101.
If you want to reach out to us, send us an email to steiny@promoter101.net.
On our next episode, we're going to be joined by UTA's J-Bo Lewis and two of Canada's biggest independent promoters in the Danforth Halls, Stephen Riff, and the Horseshoes, Jeff Cohn.
That's all for us this week. Good day, and may the good news be yours.
This is Eddie Clemens from United Talent Agency. I'm here on Promoter 101.
Ba-da-ba-ba.